Hey y'all, it's Natalie for a Cherry on Top today, and I am working in a 12 by 12 travel album. I'm using this cardstock cut from Not Just for Boys Kit Club that I had pre-cut. And I'm going to use my Spellbinders Glimmer Machine. I have this awesome new hot foil die. What do you call it? It's not a die. It's just a hot foil plate. And it is by Waffle Flower Crafts, and it is called Sunburst. And so I'm kind of showing you a little bit of what I want. I have a sunset photo from the airplane. So that was my inspiration for this background piece. So I'm warming up my Waffle Flower hot foil plate. It's a pretty big plate, so I'm going to let it get nice and warm first. And then I have this white cardstock. And I'm going to use the sunset photo as a guide. And I'm going to start with my yellow. And I'm going to let that flow into an ombre effect, kind of, what's the right word? Blend into the lilac color, because at the top is kind of purple. And I'm using Squeezed Lemonade and Shaded Lilac Distress Oxide to do this. And my Waffle Flower blending brushes, there's one for each color of the rainbow, so you don't have to worry about like cleaning them off every single time. I mean, I do clean them, but it's really nice to not have to do it every single time when you're sticking in the same color family. So I have this really smooth white cardstock that I am using, and I'm also using these Distress Oxides because they blend really beautifully, and they don't give you like a muddy look. I mean, I think that the yellow and the purple are complementary colors, so they blend together nicely anyway because of that. But just look at it. They just give a really nice gray when you kind of blend them together, and it doesn't look muddy, and they're very soft. And they go on very nicely and smoothly. So I'm going to use this piece of cardstock to hot foil up. There you can see at the top I have a glimmer foil sheet, and it's in the color Tangerine, which is an orange color, like the sun, you know, at sunset. So that is what I was thinking when I was going for this. And then I'm going to have that piece coming out of that cut file. So it's like the airplane is flying towards the sunset, like we kind of were on this trip here. So I put it pretty side down. I cut the foil just the same size as the Sunburst plate, and then I cover it with my ink blended paper, and then I'm going to cover it with my shim. I'm going to let it sit on there. I start the timer and let it sit for another little bit of time, and then I run it through my Sizzix Big Shot, and there it just pressed it into the paper with the foil on it, and look what happens when you remove it. It is heat attached to the paper, and it's beautiful. So lovely. I'm going to use a Spellbinders. This is just me putting the plate back on, so I'm going to go ahead and use the opposite foil. So I'm using the Pink Fresh Studio full plate to give the opposite foil a chance on the cardstock, and I'll use that on a later date. But I don't want all that beautiful foil to go to waste. So now I'm trying to pick a good background paper. So I have this foil piece that I want to use, and it's kind of busy. And then once I get the cardstock piece backed as well, it's going to be pretty busy. So I think about using this dot paper, but spoiler alert, I change it in a minute too. So I'm going to start. So I'm going with this for a minute here. I'm going to trim down my photos, and I back them with white cardstock. And I'm thinking about how I want it to look. And that's when I decide to start working on backing my cut file. So I grab some more smooth white cardstock, and I cut it to be only the letters. So I'm just going to work on the word jet first, and then I'll do set later. But I'm going to use the 49th and Market Vintage Artistry Everywhere collection, which is their new travel collection. And if you've watched my channel for the past year or so, you probably know that I am in love with the rub-on transfers by 49th and Market. They go on like butter. They're fabulous. They are so versatile. I can use them on so many things. So that is what I'm going to use. And I've actually done this kind of technique before, but using them and layering them up on a cardstock backing piece for this cut file is such a fun way to use it. And it really lets the gorgeous rub-on transfers pop and gives them a chance to shine. And this is when I kind of go ahead and decide I'm probably going to change my background paper, because once I start putting these rub-on transfers on, I feel like they match the background paper really beautifully, but they're kind of blend in, and they're not going to pop. And so I want more of a solid reading background paper so that they pop really nicely. Plus I'm using a white cardstock, so I want a darker background for that same reason, for it to pop really nicely. But if you are using your rub-on transfers and you run off the page a little bit because you want that nice organic look, you just fold it over onto the back a little bit, and that will be just fine. And it will, you don't need to trim it off or anything. It's just really easy to just like rub it over a little bit. If you're rubbing it on and you pull it off and you haven't rubbed all the bits off, you can relay that piece of vellum and rub them on again, or you can reposition it and rub them into a different place. So I'm just going through all of the 6x8 sheets and picking just random bits and variegating my colors and changing up if I'm using a map or text or an icon or anything else, and spreading them throughout this cardstock so that they read nicely through the cut file. And you can also layer them up. So you can see I used one of the little icons, which is not distressed. So then I layered on top of it this little canceled postage stamp, and I really like the way that looks. And then you don't have to use the whole piece. So you can cut it in half and only use a little bit that you need to cover the area that you're looking at. So those are all things that I'm doing here to fill in the background of my cut file. So you got to get the idea. I'm not going to make you watch me do the whole thing. But here I've switched to a more of a solid reading and a darker piece of paper. I'm choosing between these two, but I end up going with that navy blue right there. I really like the way everything pops off of it. And I've also trimmed down the hot foil sheet. I just use another rectangle die from Spellbinders. It goes with one of their stitching dies, but it just cut that nice rectangle out for me. And so I'm gonna let that come up from the top of the airplane. So there we have, I'm filling in the background of the word set now, and just kind of alternating. So the S is the opposite of the T at the top. So I used another map of that similar color to give it nice balance when you, back the cut file. There I am layering up a couple of the stamp cancellations on top of a color splotch. I'm telling you, do yourself a favor and grab you some of these rub-ons from 49th and Market, because they are fabulous. There is the final bit. I've cut out all of the inside bits and I'm really happy with how that looks. I love the vintage look of it, the distressed nature of it. So I'm kind of thinking that's how it's going, but I don't really love that little piece of paper, like on the printed on the background of that paper at the top. So I'm going to kind of cover it up. So I move my photos to the other side of my inside title piece, and I'm going to use this twine, and I'm going to use the cluster kit from the Everywhere collection by Vintage Artistry, 49th and Market. And it's such a fun idea. So this cluster kit, it comes in this really cool like little plastic envelope, and it has card stock, laser cut cardstock, and it also has chipboard pieces, and it also has those little clips you can see over on the right and the buttons, and it also has a big not twine, it's not twine, it's like another type of ribbon. But all of these come together, and so it gives you tips on how to build clusters, or you can create your own, which of course is always my go-to. So I'm going to create a cluster up here to kind of hide that piece of the paper that I'm not really in love with, and also to just give me nice balance and add that vintage artistry look somewhere else on the page to bring cohesion to the page. Excuse me. So I made the twine go around the page 3 times. And I tied it off. I just did a little groove at the top and the bottom with my scissors so that it had a little groove to stick in and it won't kind of slide around the page or anything. And I don't really have to use any adhesive to stick down the twine. So I chose a couple of postage stamps to go on top of the chipboard geotag, and then I'm going to use that little blue teeny tiny binder clip to stick them together with, I think I use a camera piece, and then I'm also going to use that little orange button there that I tied with some navy twine to match the background page. And so, I'm just adding a few elements of the colors that we used to back the cut file and build this little cluster. And I love that extra little bright white bit that it adds with that same collection here. And really, we're almost done. I use my Nuvo adhesive to stick it all down because it does such a good job and really will adhere all of those bits that aren't even paper. So I'm gonna back that sunshine bit with some white cardstock just so it will kind of go with the cut file since it is also kind of framed with white. And then I go to use my ATG gun, and I run out of tape, when we all know that, of course, happens always in the middle of filming, never when I'm just using it any other time. And so I grab my cherry tape. So this is a option from the store, is cherry tape, and it's so easy and quick, and I kind of forget about sometimes, but it's fabulous. So you can see me using it here. I'm just sticking it down, and you can easily tear it, and then the little strips come off really easily, and it sticks very nicely, and it will adhere everything down. And I've been using it for over a year now, and I haven't had any problems with it falling off in my scrapbooks. So I'm just adding the photos, and that's gonna call it a layout. Check me out on their Cherry on Top vlog today. You can see all the detail shots and more. You can see all the products that I used and links to them. And let me know if you have any questions down below. And I'd love it if you'd like and follow. Thank you so much. Bye, y'all.